Hello, welcome to a new episode of What Are You Selling with me, David Green. And for today, we have a first for the channel. We have not one, but two authors and a writing team to talk with us. I am with Brendan and Laurie O'Gara. How are you both doing today?
We're good. Thank you.
Thanks for asking. I'm great.
Excellent. So, I've got a lot of questions. You're the first writing. I have talked to someone before who does some co-authoring with someone else, but you're the first one that I've really kind of had on the show together, and I've always been very intrigued about the process of writing a book with someone else. So I'm really looking forward to kind of diving into that a little bit later on in the show, and obviously talking about your book Traveler's Song. So if you would, for the people that are watching at home or they're listening on the podcast, and if you are listening or watching us for the first time, please give us a follow or a subscribe. We have lots of more interviews on the channel. We have reviews, live reads, and we also have the Wheel of Time show, Easing the Reader, as well, where we talk about the books and the TV show. So, Brendan and Laurie, if you would, if you just tell us the viewers a little bit about yourselves and what kind of genre that you're writing.
Well, I usually write contemporary fiction, and fantasy was more of Brendan's. That's what he likes to write.
Right.
But go ahead, tell him about your cookbook.
Okay. So Traveler's Song is the book that we got out there, but Traveler's Song didn't just start out there. It started out with a cookbook that I wrote, Guide to the No-Hills, Fantastic Recipes. I needed anybody can write a cookbook. You can just go online, download some recipes, put them together, and boom, you got a cookbook. But I took mine and I said, let's put a cookbook out there and let's put some inserts of good manners and good ideas and things you could do. And then I said, that's not enough. Let's put stories in between there of adventurers, because fantastic recipes from the 7 kingdoms taken from the greatest pubs, taverns, and inns. So I based it on the idea that this king, this liege lord, sent a group of adventurers out to go find all the best food of the land he'd heard of. And so they go out. And every now and then there's a excerpt of them by the fire and talking about things or things that they've seen. And I took the book out and I sold pretty good amount, not great, but pretty good. And after about the 100th person coming back to me saying, your food's great, it's easy to follow. I especially love the fact that you have a 3-page recipe for an apple pie telling me step by step what to do. But what happened to this adventure group? And because of 100 people asking me what happened to the adventure group, then I wrote Traveler's Song.
He says, hey, you want to write a fantasy novel? I said, all right, we'll give it a shot. So
I'm going to need some help, and you've got the expertise.
Yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
I just started writing.
Right.
and then it kept growing, and the characters kept growing, and we ended up with this big universe. And one book is going to end up to be a trilogy because he just kept writing and writing and writing, and I kept writing, and we just had so much. We had to just make it stop somewhere so we could. Ended up, it's going to be probably 3 books at least.
Cool. And it all comes from a cookbook, which and the idea of the cookbook is such a great idea to have from someone who's going on these adventures, because when you read classic fantasy, so much of it happens on the road. People are always traveling somewhere, they're always stopping off at inns, and there's always some comment about food and drink there, and it's usually just some kind of like more of an abstract kind of thing where it's like this food mixed together. So what was the spark for you, Brendan, to do the cookbook, in that kind of way? Was it just something that you had always thought of doing when you were reading this kind of stuff, or was it just?
I thought that when I wrote this and when I put it together, I thought to myself, there's nothing else like this. There are the Gordon Ramsays, there's the, celebrity chefs that put out their named cookbook, because they've got the name and they've got the TV show and all that. Well, I don't have any of that, but I have these recipes and I have these things because I've made them.
Yeah.
What's a good hook that's going to catch your eye and make you think twice about reading it. So the adventure novels.
Well, and this was his cookbook was before, now you have Game of Thrones and they have a cookbook, and and Harry Potter has a cookbook. And this was before all of that. And in the little stories, it's written in first person because Gadlin's out looking for the recipes. And there's one that's dragon steak, and he's got some pretty interesting different titles for these recipes. So
well, if there is a dragon steak or dragon stew, and you can substitute flank steak or something of that nature. I tell people, don't worry about it. If you don't have any blue dragon or even black dragon, it's okay.
Well, and Gadlin hates dragons, so he'd be one to kill one and eat it. So
okay. I mean, a dragon tasty? And can you do? Is it like a steak where you can have it well done or rare or?
Yes.
Red meat.
Red meat.
Yeah, excellent. And what kind of guy is a Gadlin? Is he rare or well done? Is that something that's? Do you know that about him, or is it something?
No, I can't. I don't.
You have to put that
wants them all dead. He doesn't.
Well, Gadlin would like dragon medium rare.
Okay, like my wife, but I don't think.
There you go.
So Laurie, you usually do you worked on contemporary fiction. What kind of things were you kind of reading before you started your writing? Was it that kind of genre as well, or were you a fan of fantasy before?
I read more fantasy than I do contemporary fiction. I'm also a librarian, so I read a lot of different things, but I read a lot of fantasy.
You have to read books to be able to recommend a book.
Yeah, I do. I have to read a lot of books. And it's funny that you mentioned Wheel of Time. That's one I had never read until the TV show came out. Now I'm starting to read that one, and that was always his favorite. So,
right, yeah, I mean it's my favorite as well. Like I love Wheel of Time, but it's interesting that you're reading the book with the TV show. Because I know a lot of people that I've kind of spoken to that are waiting for the first season to be over, and then they're going to start reading because they don't want any spoilers for the TV show.
Has the TV show upset you, David?
No, not at all. But I mean, I've worked on adaptations. I've done adaptations for fantasy novels that are currently in the works at studios. So I kind of like I'm very easy with separating this and this and this. And I'm kind of always of the view of like, I just want to see something. I want to see these characters doing something slightly new because I know the books inside and out. So it's like, well, I'd like to see a twist on this. And I'm also kind of one of these people that, even though they are my favorite books, I know they're not perfect. And there's some bits of it where I'm kind of like, this could have been, I wonder if Robert Jordan would have done this any differently if he'd gone back to it, particularly the first book. So I'm kind of interested just to see it through another set of eyes, really. And but my wife is watching it with me, and she doesn't read fantasy, and she's seen Harry Potter, and she's seen Lord of the Rings, and she's seen Game of Thrones. And for like 12 years, I've been like, try Eye of the World, give it a read and see what you think. And no, never done it. TV show comes out and she loves it, and it's great just to kind of sit with her and watch it. And it's great to be able to talk to her about it, because obviously if it was one-to-one to the book, right, then you'd be kind of like, you'd just know everything that's going to happen, and with this, it's nice to kind of have that little bit of speculation on stuff that's a little bit different and new plot lines and all that. So yeah, I'm enjoying it.
I could say pretty much the same thing, but I don't know. It's hard to get over, some of the changes. I'm not going to say anything now because it's, spoilers about what is happening on the TV show versus what happened in the books. But overall, I got to say they're doing a pretty good job. Good job.
Yeah, and it's always it's when you love something, it's a bit harder. My best friend is a big fan of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, as most fantasy people are. But my best friend just still to this day cannot watch the movies. He hates them. He's like, I know, like, objectively they're good movies, but I just can't get over the changes. But the Wheel of Time doesn't bother him that much. So it's one of those things, I think. So when Traveler's Song, anyway, let's get back onto the Traveler's Song. So
All right.
we can talk about Wheel of Time for hours, and that's not what we're here to do, not this time anyway. So the Traveler's Song, obviously, then it came from the cookbook, but how much of that link is there, and was there any kind of idea for this character and for this world before the cookbook existed, and then you just thought, well, this will suit this idea that I've already got?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, there was an idea for this character and for this group, but I didn't put as much time and effort into it as I did after the 100th person came to me at a Renaissance fair or a book signing or something and said, okay, what happened to these guys?
We spent a lot of time. We spent a lot of time character building and world building. I would say months and months before we actually sat down and started writing Traveler's Song. We would do a scene just to get a character feel for how the character would behave in the scene. So we had a lot of that done before we even sat down and started putting a book together.
We've got maps and we've got character descriptions and all sorts of things, all in little files. I've got a map on my wall, as a matter of fact, of the world that it takes place in.
That we hand drew, because we're not map drawers. So
I'd love to have that on one of my. That's one of my dreams, to do that.
Well, and we don't have the map in the book, but we're thinking about maybe hiring someone who's much more talented at map drawing than we are to put it maybe in the second or third book. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking the inside front cover and the inside back cover.
Yeah, because it's starting to grow. The more they travel, the more we're talking about, and the bigger the
they're talking about their homelands. Like in the first book, there's a area that it kind of slows down because it talks about everybody's backstory, where they came from and how they got together. And some people think I should have spread that out into, second book and then some more in the third book, but I got it out of the way so that everybody knew who the other one was, and they had ideas and they could develop these ideas of these people in their heads.
Well, we still didn't put all the backstory, and there's still a lot that's not said yet.
Right.
So
yeah. The cover's fantastic as well. I mean, you can see it there now. It's a very evocative cover. It's quite beautiful. Why don't you tell us the brief synopsis of this book, which you think is going to be at least a trilogy?
Go ahead.
Oh boy, a brief synopsis of the book.
Well, it doesn't have to be brief. It can be as long as you want.
Well, there's a necromancer. That's Necromancer Song.
He's the self-proclaimed emperor.
Yes, he's the self-proclaimed emperor. And the necromancer is both a protagonist and an antagonist at the same time. It depends on the reader's point of view how they take what he does.
And where we are in the timeline too.
And he has an opposite also, who is both a protagonist and an antagonist as well. Now, the necromancer's name is Morclasian. He is very much about saving humanity, about doing it in a humane manner to save humanity. Granted, he does raise the dead for an army, and he does use an undead army when he fights people. Some people would see that as evil, but he doesn't really see it as evil because they were dead before he raised them. He didn't kill them.
Right.
It's, naturally sourced dead,
Right.
Yeah, I can see his point, to be fair.
Naturally sourced dead is what he uses. And then there's the other guy who is about saving his civilization, and he doesn't care about the rest of humanity. So you can see the selfishness and you can see the giving, and it's, it depends on where the reader's point of view is, who the antagonist and who the protagonist is. I haven't given you a synopsis yet. So Gadlin and his friends are sent out. They're actually been sent out as spies. They are to go out to these different towns and find recipes and also find the strengths and weaknesses of major cities so that when Morclasian does come through, he has the spy information and he knows what the strengths and weaknesses is of the town before
Right.
he lays siege to them.
Okay, that makes sense. That's what a good planner would do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. And there are hints of things to come in the first one that are in the long game, and you'll see there's combat, there's intrigue, there's romance,
A little bit, not a lot.
light romance. I'm not a big romance writer or big I don't do that really well. However, my writing companion does that just fine.
Yeah.
Since she has written a few contemporary fiction books
that are full of that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good balance to have, because it's good to bring in, and it also brings on the thing that I kind of wanted to talk to you about. So writing a book together, how does that work? I mean, what roles do you both take in this? I'm really intrigued as to know what your process is.
well, we have two totally different processes for writing.
Okay.
He's more of the by the seat of his pants kind of thing, and I don't really outline, but I do plot diagram, and I have an idea. I write my first few chapters first, and then the end of my book first, and then I know how I'm going to get there. He does not. he gets a character in a scene, in a situation, and he knows how it's going to move the story forward.
Mhm.
So he'll go ahead and he'll write a scene, but then he might go back and write. He doesn't write linear, so he'll write different scenes. So he might be working on one part while I'm over here working on, several chapters ahead. And then when he's finished with his little bit, we'll swap what we're writing, and we'll talk it through. And it's a lot of, do you really think this character would behave this way? Well, I'm not really sure. We do a lot of back and forth. Our writing room here, we're back to back. So we're right here, we're talking a lot. And then there's days where we don't talk at all. We just write for 4 or 5 hours. And
You
we
just
don't
no
say
sound,
anything,
just
so-
clickety clack, the keyboard you're going, and we're like not even talking. And then
And
an
then
hour or two goes by. We go, what do you got? What do you got?
And it's almost like sometimes working with someone, it's so quiet. He's typing, I'm typing, and then I'm like, hey, wait a minute. What does this word mean? Or what do you think about this? And then we start talking. It's just kind of crazy. But and I do he doesn't edit as he writes.
Nope,
I
not at all.
write and edit as I go.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I've got this nice clean scene, and he's like, oh, but you need to put this in here. And he drops me a couple paragraphs or an idea, and then I'm cleaning up his non-edited bits. And of course it all gets sent off to the editor, and she's okay with it.
Have you
but
ever written a sentence that was 3 pages long?
I'm
I
like,
have.
there needs to be some punctuation somewhere, please. And
Yeah.
there's
No,
a lot of
I'd be a lot more like Laurie with that. I would edit as I kind of work, and I just do it without even thinking these days. I just I do a paragraph and keep going. I don't know. I couldn't do it any other kind of way at this point. So do you work on separate documents, or do you work on like Google Drive or something so you can see?
we use a lot of Google Drive, but we
Yes.
also work on separate documents and then end up putting it together in a shared document.
Okay.
It kind of depends on
Because
where we are in there.
we have different platforms and devices that we write on.
Yeah.
And I'll be
Right.
somewhere, and I'll be driving somewhere, and I'll pick up my telephone and I'll send a text message, and it'll be a description of a scene that's going on, and then she'll get a text message and go, "What are you talking about?"
It takes me a
This
minute.
is in a
Oh,
book.
wait. Okay. That's what you're
Right,
doing.
right.
Yeah.
Book idea.
Well, does that happen when you're out in your everyday life? Say you're out at
Yeah.
the store, or you're out for dinner, or you're out at the movies, and then just suddenly just be like, that thing we were working on earlier today. I've had an idea. Does that happen?
It
Yes.
does a lot. Yes.
Okay. And is there anything that comes to mind where there's something where you've had like a really major disagreement about a story? And on the other side, is there a bit where someone's
He has sometimes he gets a little crazy. He wants to put his dad jokes in the writing, and I have to edit them out.
One of the characters is a bard. He tells stories, and he sings, and he tells jokes. And sometimes his jokes are very much dad jokes.
And
she and the editor pull them out, and I'm like, but that was funny.
It's funny, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't go.
This doesn't carry the plot forward. We're not putting it in.
And I would say that's probably about the only place we've really completely disagreed on something.
Dad jokes. Well, dad jokes will do that for that's
not that there's not humor, a little bit of humor in the book. There is, but
there's even humor in the combat if you pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, in one scene, they're fighting this giant spider, and one of the characters picks up a crossbow and inadvertently fires it off. Well, it fires it off, misses the spider, bounces off of one of the guy's shields, and goes off somewhere else. And somebody's like, with a little training, she could be dangerous. Somebody else says, she's dangerous now.
Yeah. There's nothing, you do want a little bit of a bit of combat humor does go a long way to, you want to have that. Yeah, it does. On the other hand, on the other side of having, disagreements about something, is there anything that comes to mind about where one of the other one has come up with a story idea that, or a character moment that you'd never occurred to you, but man was like, you know what, that is brilliant, and I'm so glad.
Oh, that has happened a couple times.
Yes, it has. Don't ask me to name you a time, but because my memory is not great, but I know it's happened.
Well, I think because at the beginning it was just this band of travelers, and I said, I think you need a girl in there. And so I ended up writing a female character. He says, why don't you handle that? So
you handle the female character and not all that goings on.
Yeah. So, and that's why that was probably one of the biggest adding a character.
Yeah. So do you write? Yeah. Are you both working on separate solo author things as well? And how is that different for you now when you've worked together on something? Is it do you enjoy the break of working on your own, or do you miss the co-authorship?
You're not working on anything separate right now, are you?
Oh.
Yeah, but I do. I write a little nonfiction things as well. So that's kind of to stop my brain from ticking on what we're writing, to give it a rest. I'll pick up on my other projects.
And in order to for her to be working on these things, she'll say, hey, what does so-and-so mean? How do you spell? And
he's my research assistant for my other writing. So
there you go.
Right. I'm writing, but he's still helping.
You're always working together, and so that's great. It's such a nice dynamic that you've got going on there. It sounds wonderful.
Well, it helps that we've known each other since we were about 12 years old too.
Right. Okay. Okay. Right. Yeah. That's brilliant. So what's next for you two? Obviously, you've got the Traveller Song, Necromancer Song, book one. Obviously, it's a book one, and you're talking earlier in the interview about it being potentially a trilogy. What's next in 2022 for you guys?
Well, book two, we're working on book two. I'm looking for the other. We have these are our compendium books. So they're little, they're kind of like novellas. And Morclasian is in most of these. I'm working on another compendium book for Traveller Song that's in a different place in the timeline. Most of these are way before Traveller Song events even happen.
Traveller Song takes place on the timeline 4,000 years from now.
Yeah.
Right.
So
there have been quite a few cataclysmic events that have happened to the Earth. The atmospheric changes, the temperature changes, the earthquakes and things like that. That's why there are still aspects of things from the past, like cities and things that have been overgrown.
And technology, some
technology, new technology too. And the landscape, the maps are different. However, it still takes place on Earth, but 4,000 years in the future.
Okay, I like that. I like that in fantasy. I like fantasy set in our futures. It's always something that grabs my attention. as a reader. I do enjoy that kind of thing. Brendan and Laurie, thank you so much for coming on to the show today and talking to me about Traveller's Song and all your other work. Where is the best place for people to find you on the internet if they want to check things out?
Well, we have a website. It's the-ogueras.com, and all of our books are there. My contemporary fiction, our fantasy, my nonfiction, we have them all in one spot. And at the very bottom of the page is all of our social media links, but we're very, very easy to find. Laurie and Brendan O'Gara there's not too many of them out there. So I've not found another pair. So
Outside of Ireland, there's not a lot of O'Garas.
No, there's not a lot. All the O'Garas here in Florida are related. So
right, okay. That happens sometimes as well. Yeah, yeah. That's brilliant. So people that are listening and watching, all the links will be below in the show notes. Brendan, Laurie, again, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us, David.
No problem. And enjoy the holiday season and best of luck in 2022. And for everyone watching, thank you for sticking with us till the end, and we'll see you next time.